But I'm going to channel Dan first.
Yes, no, that's what he promised us, actually. The channeler who just spoke there is Robert Floden. Is that right?
That's correct. Good.
University Distinguished Professor of Teacher Education at Michigan State University College of Education. He is the co-principal investigator of Teachers for a New Era initiative. And to his right and your left is Joan Farini-Mundy, who's the Associate Dean Director of the Division of Science and Math Education at Michigan State, and also a co-director of Teachers for a New Era. And to my immediate right is David Bynum, who will be the third speaker on the panel. He's a professor of biochemistry and cell biology at Stony Brook on Long Island, and he's the founding director for a new Center for Science and Mathematics Education. Why don't we start with the channeler? And if I'm going to ask the presenters to be even briefer than usual, since, as I said, we're somewhat behind.
We're somewhat behind, yes. We're done already here. So let me say a little bit of what Dan Fallon would have said. So I'm going to do two things. I'm going to talk a little bit about Teachers for New Era as a national initiative and say some of the things that Dan would have said. And then I'm going to speak a little bit about Michigan State University's, what it's done in particular as part of the Teachers for New Era, and Joan will follow up with some more of that. So what is Teachers for New Era? Teachers for New Era is a national effort to strengthen K-12 teaching by developing state-of-the-art schools of education focused on evidence-driven teacher education programs. So I want to digress for just a moment. As I've been listening to things today and thinking about how this is a different initiative, I was reminded of comments I heard at a conference I was at in New Delhi, or Delhi, a few months ago in India. The title of that conference was Quality Education for All. It's a regional thing that the World Bank did. And a lot of the discussion about the presenters was about how this was a needed follow-up to the prior initiative, which was Education for All. So what happened in India was they succeeded in Education for All, and they got all the kids in school. And then they found out that there wasn't much going on in much of the schools. In fact, some didn't even have teachers there. So they needed to move on to quality education for all. And into this morning, we've heard about both things for teacher preparation for science and math teaching, both about increasing the quantity and about making that be for excellent teachers. And Teachers for New Era, when it started, really focused on the latter, rather than focusing on how to get more people into the classroom. And heaven knows if the people we got into the classroom were like some of the people that Patrick's students, the Berkeley students saw when they were high school students, we wouldn't be solving any problem except providing pastoral care for the students. And so we want to have quality teachers, and that's what Teachers for a New Era was working on. And it also wanted to do this in a few institutions and then try to influence public policy leaders concerned with the quality of the nation's teachers. And Dan Fallon, who's not here, was the person behind this. He is trained as a psychologist, but a lot of work in higher education. He was the head of Project 30, which was an initiative at 30 higher ed institutions to bring together arts and science faculty and education faculty to improve teacher preparation. Then he moved to the Carnegie Corporation of New York as the program officer there, and this is the program that was his baby that he brought there. He got money from Ford, Rockefeller, and Annenberg together. And they selected some institutions. They had in mind that improving teacher education was not going to be something that would just be duplicated at different places. That will work in some cases, but of the 1,400 places that prepare teachers around the country, they are dramatically different in the sort of institutions they do, and it's quite reasonable to think that the sort of teacher preparation that would be best for each of those institutions is not going to be a single model. Single model may work in a lot of places, but not everywhere, and so they went through an elaborate process of selecting 11 institutions where they thought there was good teacher education going on already, but the faculty there had the capacity to make a dramatic improvement at each of the institutions, and they would cover the gamut of the sorts of places that prepare teachers. So here's the list up here: Michigan State, Bank Street, University of Virginia, Cal State Northridge, Boston College, UConn, Stanford, Wisconsin-Milwaukee, University of Texas El Paso, and Florida A&M. And if you know about these sort of places, you'll see that they represent Research 1 places, like Michigan State and Stanford, places that are minority-serving but strong research presence, like University of Texas El Paso, a historically black university, Florida A&M, a master's-oriented institution, Cal State Northridge, enormous preparator of teachers, 1,700 a year. And Bank Street, which doesn't even have an arts and science faculty. So it was a little challenging for them to do this collaboration of education and arts and science because they don't have any at Bank Street. And what the initiative did was to say that they wanted to work across these groups to come up with a number of different models with evidence behind them, so that the country, and sort of state by state, since most of the action is at the state level in education, they would have models to draw on and working to improve teacher preparation across the subject areas, including math and science. They didn't give these institutions a carte blanche to just do whatever you want. They had a few principles that Dan had in mind and refined through his consultations with a variety of people, and they're themes that fit with the meeting today. There's nothing here that's out of line with any of those. One is that the decisions about the programs should be based on evidence, and there was a big emphasis on the institutions collecting more evidence. There should be engagement with the arts and science between education faculty and arts and science faculty, and that's where Joan and I will be focusing a lot of what we have to say. And then he had this elaborate phrase of teaching as an academically taught clinical practice profession. The translation is that after people graduate, in all the field experiences, you shouldn't just send your teacher candidates out into schools and let the K-12 teachers do it, absent the university. There should be a university connection to all the field experiences, including induction. Now, Dan wanted us to point out a couple of the challenges that these institutions have faced, and your questions have raised some of these things for us. A lot of our presentations have been the upbeat part of all the things we're accomplishing, but once you try to do this on the ground, it's not so easy. And here are a couple of big challenges. One is the evidence, and one of the questions last time was, well, so what do you know about the effectiveness of these teachers? And someone said at the beginning that there are only 7 states in the country where it's possible, even if you could work through all the dirtiness of the data, to connect teachers to pupil achievement. Only 7 in the nation so far. Michigan is not one of them. It's not. We test our teachers. We know who they are. We know roughly where they are. We test all the kids many times. We can track those kid to kid, year to year, but we can't collect the teacher and student data yet on the statewide basis. So that's one of the things where change in policy is needed, and the federal government might help. And another of this clinical practice, induction came up a couple times as a really important thing, and it's been mentioned that although many states have a requirement for induction, there's seldom, and California is one of the exceptions, seldom funding that would be available to get the university engaged in that. So now I'm going to change from Dan's presentation to my presentation. 1 second. Close this window. Yes. All right. So now the Michigan State version of Teachers for a New Era. So this is just what I said before about Teachers for a New Era in general and the principles. And I want to focus on the part of this that's about bringing together faculty in the colleges of social science, arts and letters, and natural science being most appropriate here at Michigan State. And give you just a little background on Michigan State, very little. So we're a Research 1 university. Actually, in the mantra at Michigan State, we're an AAU, that means research, land grant, which means service to the state university, and we try to do both. We are one of the exceptions. People said, well, the R1s are not engaged in a major way in teacher preparation. We produce about 500 teachers a year, and that's actually down from where we used to be. We used to produce around 2,000 teachers a year. So we're a big teacher preparation institution and have continued to be. The numbers are down in part because of the lack of jobs in Michigan. And so we're a big player there. And actually in math and science secondary, we're about the size of UTeach. We produce 75, 80 math and science secondary teachers a year, as well as 300 elementary teachers, all of whom are prepared as best we can to teach mathematics and science. So we're producing, between 300 and 400 teachers who are going to teach math and science a year. We also had some history of collaboration between the science faculty and the education faculty, but the Teachers for a New Era effort gave us money to try to strengthen that connection. And so what we did was we formed teams in each of the core subject areas. We'll just talk about math and science here. And in each of the teams we had a co-leader, one person from the College of Natural Science, one person from the College of Education, senior faculty members. And we put together teams on each of these, balanced between arts and, let's say, the College of Natural Science and the College of Education in each of these teams, and connections to K-12 teachers, and got them talking about what you needed to do to prepare excellent teachers of mathematics and science. And we talked about the range of things that have been covered here, but I want to focus today, and I think Joan will too, on something that's been just sort of glossed over in this, which is, so what is given that they need to do pedagogy, they need to do field experience, all that, what's the content that they need to learn? I mean, what is it that, if you're going to prepare to be a biology teacher or a secondary math teacher, what math do you need to know? And the sort of default is, well, you get a degree in the subject. And there you end up with these people like, Patrick's students, all those people probably that your students thought were terrible math teachers had a degree in mathematics. And they weren't very good teachers. So what is it that's part of that's pedagogy, and there's some there, and we won't talk about that right now, but also what do they need to know about the mathematics that would actually help them teach the things they're going to teach in middle school and high school? And I would just throw out on the table that probably a course in topology isn't going to help them much in teaching pre-algebra. Probably not. And probably a course in advanced analysis isn't going to help them very much. So what is it that's going to help them? Some of the stuff is sort of no-brainer, although we looked at our curriculum and we could see we needed to do something differently, like maybe they ought to have a course in geometry if they're going to teach high school. And lo and behold, we hadn't actually required math majors to take a course in geometry, so there was an easy change. And but it goes deeper than that to try to think about what would be appropriate for elementary and secondary in these areas. And it would be different for elementary and secondary. So in the science, so one thing about evidence before I go to the science team. We did try to look at evidence of student learning here, and we've done some of the work that would help us be ready should Michigan give us the opportunity to do this sort of thing on a large scale. We have a National Science Foundation math science partnership called PROMISE, and one of the things they did was collect detailed pupil achievement data across grades K-12 on thousands of kids in Michigan and Ohio, and collect information on the teachers, including where they did their teacher preparation. And so we could do the study that said, so what does a Michigan State grad look like compared to grads from any place else? One of the things we learned, and it will be part of the challenges in all this, is once you try to get to the level where it might be informative, like you'd actually like to know, were they better at teaching fourth grade content, because it could be topic specific, the numbers get small fast. So when you want to do a comparison that lets you compare Michigan State grads to others, well, you really have to control for school, and you probably don't want to look at the people that graduated 30 years ago, because that isn't the program we have anymore. And so the numbers get small fast in trying to make these inferences. And the thing that we learned on the positive side is where you get some traction isn't on the general number. And so this will be a disappointment when people get to this in general. If you just took their Michigan assessment scores and said were they better or worse, it's not very informative because you don't know if Michigan State did a little better. Well, so how does that tell you anything about the program? But when we look topic specific, two-dimensional geometry versus division by fractions, we could see that our grads were a little better in some things than others, and it allowed us to go back and look back at our curriculum and make some changes in what we were doing. All right, so a little bit about the science team. So we had a science team, people in the College of Education, scientists in the College of Natural Science. And they got together, and one of the things they talked about is, so what do you need to know in science and what makes for a good science teacher? And one of the things that was really useful was getting the scientists to look at secondary school teachers performing and look at the differences in how they performed and try to think about where that might come. And it's just at the gross level, it's some people get up at the front and they lecture and they go through the big book and people are memorizing things. And other people seem to be actually trying to help students understand the systems that they're studying so that when faced with a novel task where they can't say, well, that was on page 343, I think. I can look it up. They would be able to reason their way through something about photosynthesis or the carbon cycle or something like that. And teachers differ in this. And if you go and you look at the teachers differ in this in part because of their own understanding. Many of the teachers who teach in a very routine way, that's how they understand science. And a lot of people going through, an undergraduate degree learn a lot of facts and a lot of things that they can recite and can't reason their way out of a paper bag. And others of them seem to understand it. And so the scientists got this and they said, oh my gosh, and these people are doing well in our classes. Yeah, they are. They're getting good grades. They're able to put back the stuff that you ask them on the test. And so we engaged with to work on this with one of the large undergraduate courses that all people, except those with AP credit, who are going to be biology teachers take. We thought, you're not going to deal with this just with the teachers. Let's start with the biology they're teaching. And we engaged with a biologist who said, I'm going to change the way I teach this course so that it focuses more on trying to understand the systems rather than just learning all of the facts. And he changed his pedagogy in ways that made different use of the lecture time. He still had the students read the book. They still had to take the regular tests, but we developed some additional tests to test these other things. And the good news is we do have data about this, and the people who've gone through this class do as well as the students under the prior regime on the standard tests they used to give, but they do better on the tests that involve reasoning than people who went through the older program. So we're optimistic that this model, when we show these data to other scientists, we're getting some traction in other courses, and we're trying to push forward on not just focusing on the teachers, but focusing on the content preparation, which has to be broader because you don't know who's going to be a biology teacher for sure when they're taking these introductory courses. And making changes there that we think will lead to them being teachers who can help their students understand. And with that, I'm going to pass it along to Joan. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. It's great to be here talking about this work at Michigan State University. I'm going to take us now a little bit into the insides of what the mathematics team did as a way of illustrating a couple of the points that Bob has mentioned and actually that others have mentioned through the morning. As Bob told you, we started off by creating teams that were cross-disciplinary from mathematics, in this case mathematics, statistics, teacher education, curriculum, and mathematics education. And these folks, as their initial task, made for themselves a set of what I guess we call teacher knowledge standards. They took several months to just think about what it might be that teachers would need to know in mathematics in order to teach at all levels. They read the literature, they looked at what research might have to say about this. It was a wonderful luxury to be able to take that time to think about a framing for the work of the program. And in fact, what the math team did was to not do what very often happens to those of us who've worked on math standards. They didn't make a list of math topics. They instead began with a list of considerations or major areas of focus that they felt needed to be addressed in any mathematics course, not only the courses that were specific for teachers, but courses that might have teachers sitting in. And so just a quick scan of that, they talked about the importance of emphasizing the origins of the mathematical ideas so that a teacher or anyone else using the mathematics would have some sense of the genesis of the notion. They talked about the importance of the mathematical reasoning that applies to the particular concepts and ideas being used, whether they be algebraic or geometric and so forth. And then some specific subject matter knowledge, key definitions, algorithms, and theorems. Big focus on representation, the images and visuals and ways in which the structures and topics are described, and then key applications for any area. This conversation, whether or not it has actually really resulted fully yet in a transformation of the math curriculum is unclear, but what it did result in was a very strong set of connections and communications between the mathematicians and the education folks working on this. So the exercise of writing down standards turned out to be a fruitful way to build some collaboration. This work has led to various kinds of developments, and I'll just tell you briefly about some of them. When looking at state standards and state expectations for teachers, as well as state trends, where although the data systems in Michigan aren't terrific, it is still very much the case that teachers and schools do have access to the Michigan assessment data and do have a way of looking at the performance of their students. There was a decision by the math team in TNE to create a new course in data representation and interpretation for elementary teachers and to make that an elective. And so that's been piloted, and we're starting to get some results on that right away. Interesting enough, along the way with that, the same members of the statistics department who had gotten interested in this teacher prep issue then became interested in a general university-wide issue about quantitative literacy. And so there is now an activity going on at MSU where that team, and an expanded version of it, is designing assessment tools to try to look at the topic of quantitative literacy across the university with an eye toward changing requirements in the general education area. An illustration, I guess, that these initiatives to reform teacher education can really have pretty wide ramifications for a university. The second thing I wanted to mention is that the math team also decided it wanted to study and take a status or a snapshot look at the actual knowledge that our elementary teacher candidates have in mathematics. So they designed instruments, they conducted these assessments, and they've been reporting on these findings as a way of both helping the field to know what typical elementary teachers look like in a preparation program, but also to refine and rethink the course content. And then finally, this had started before TNE, but it really took on some stronger momentum during the Teachers for a New Era time, and that is the Capstone Course in the mathematics department for those who would become teachers. And so this is following a full major in mathematics. These students come together. They're taught typically by a mathematician teaming up with a mathematics educator, focusing on the mathematics of the high school and middle school, but from an advanced standpoint, with some focus on pedagogy, but primarily a focus on bringing together the mathematics that had been part of the undergraduate preparation all along. The T&E resources gave us a way to put more energy to that course as well. In addition, around T&E, Bob has mentioned the Math-Science Partnership activity. We had other NSF funding at the time to develop assessments for mathematical knowledge of teaching algebra. A construct that has been discussed by a number of researchers, the idea that sort of knowing the mathematics isn't enough, knowing learners isn't enough, knowing pedagogy isn't enough, and maybe there's something in the intersection of these areas that needs to be fostered and nurtured in prospective teachers, but also assessed so that we can take a look at the ways in which teachers' knowledge and characteristics influence learning. Just as an aside, I would add that one of the postdocs on that project was a person who had been a graduate student at UT Austin and who had taught in the special mathematics courses for teachers, and that Patrick Callahan has been an advisor to that project. So these communities do all intersect and overlap, and the thinking has a lot of convergence. Bob mentioned that there are opportunities and challenges, and I'll just close with a little bit of that. The importance, at least in the work that we engaged in with T&E, of really working strategically to deepen the discussion of teachers' content preparation. We're hearing about how that's happening in a variety of initiatives and projects, but the question still remains, what content is important for teachers at different levels of different subjects and different domains? not a simple answer to this. And then what connection to the K-12 curriculum and to standard university content majors should there be for programs that are working to prepare teachers? And how do we decide and how do we have that conversation? And I'm actually excited that there are so many initiatives nationally looking at this question from different ways and in different angles, because ultimately I think we'll get some progress on it. But along with wanting to get progress on that comes the need to gather usable evidence. And we keep hearing about the data issues all the way through these presentations, but they reappear here. The importance of being able to measure and describe teachers' knowledge and skills in ways that are quantifiable so that those can be related to pupil performance, and also in taking a look at the ways in which those profiles of knowledge and skills contribute to pupil knowledge and to pupil learning. I want to just say a couple of things very briefly here at the end about the National Mathematics Panel. Oh, no, I'm not done with this stuff yet, I guess. Okay. Another opportunity is to learn from international comparisons. There is a major study now going on called the Teacher Education Development Study in Mathematics. It's an IEA study. The International Center is based at Michigan State University, and this is a study partially funded by the NSF, but looking around the world at the links between teacher education policies, practices, and outcomes in the area of mathematics specifically. And so that is going to be an interesting study to watch, because we'll learn some things about practices around the world for primary and lower secondary teachers, and we'll be able to talk about characteristics of teacher education programs that prepare future teachers of mathematics effectively. That's sort of the big question that the TED study is trying to examine. So it too must look at the measurement of outcomes and how those relate to policies and practices. There is also much to be learned about innovative approaches, both to increasing quantity and increasing quality together, and to this matter of gathering and using evidence, which then really does bring me to the National Math Panel comment that I wish to make. I was an ex officio member of the National Math Panel. I'm on leave right now at the National Science Foundation. And that panel report has been released, and if folks aren't familiar with it, I would point you to the website, which is ed.gov Math Panel. And I wanted to tell you that that panel had a very substantial working group component of the report on teachers and teacher education. Now, it's mathematics focused, but it's an excellent review of the literature available on issues of quality and quantity and retention in mathematics teacher education. And one of the most important findings there is that it's not so clear from the evidence from research exactly what it is about particular teachers, what they know and do, that makes them more effective. That continues to be a very challenging problem for research and practice. And as these initiatives move forward, T&E and NIMSY and others, and Marianne's words about we need to watch these experiments. We need to understand the ways in which these multiple models and approaches relate to ultimately the impact on student learning. It's a big challenge and a very interesting moment in teacher preparation. So thanks.
Thank you. Gee, when I hear all these presentations, it really makes me glad that I'm in this line of work. I think it's really nice to see so many people interested in doing this kind of thing. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about a different way of looking at things, although we're doing the same thing, entrepreneurship and science education. I wasn't always in this line of work. I started out actually in the oil business in West Texas and Oklahoma when I was a very young man. But the lessons I learned there, which were work ethic, teamwork, and above all, I think mentorship and safety, really have stood me well over time. And so this was back in my 20s. I evolved later on to get involved in biochemistry and cell biology. I spent a summer at Woods Hole in 1978. And there I really learned to appreciate science. You get up in the morning, you do science all day long, you do it at night, you finally go back exhausted. You're around world-class scientists running around in T-shirts and shorts, and you get inspired by the process. I'd never seen anything like this. This was science firsthand, and I said, my goodness, this is what I want to do, and if I ever get an opportunity, this is what I want to leverage out into the community so other people get an opportunity to do what I enjoy doing. So fast forward 15 years, I'm at Stony Brook, wrote the first NIH Bridges to the Baccalaureate grant award where we partnered with community colleges. I knew nothing about community colleges. This grant is still ongoing. We brought them in to do science at Stony Brook. We're in touch with many of these, and this was the start into education. This time I knew very little about schools, education, how these could work together. Turns out working in the oil fields was great because we worked with the Hughes Tool Company, which later on morphed through a lot of transformations into the Howard Hughes Medical Institute, which has now given us about $5 million over the years to do these kinds of things. So it was kind of a fortuitous transformation. But we got $1 million from the Hughes next year, and we've began to do with the high schools, especially the high needs high schools on Long Island, what we were doing with the community college students, bringing them to the Stony Brook for the summer, teaching them how to do research, giving them experiences, then they would go back into their schools. We also developed research opportunities for our own undergraduates and opened up labs for our faculty to develop new courses. The next year, we took over a biotechnology teaching center, and this is a key component. We've had about 40,000 middle and high school students go through here since then. They come and work on the campus for half a day or a day. We had 2 classes there yesterday working in the BTC. We've expanded it to 4 labs, and they come there and they do basic molecular biology that they need as part of the New York State standards. It's a wonderful opportunity because they come with their teachers. You get to know the students, you get to know the teachers, and we actually have our pre-service teachers working in here as interns and sometimes as teachers. This has been so productive. We're just starting to do a CTL, a chemistry teaching lab, and we're working on a PTL and perhaps an earth science teaching lab later. The details of this are really kind of cool because we adhere to the standards. It's inquiry-based. They're not guided through it. They learn on their own. The teachers come in and schedule their classes, and the students actually pay $17 for this. So you can see we're a little bit entrepreneurial here, but with the high-needs school districts, we actually, through grants, support them to do it. So if you don't have the money, you can come to the BTC anyway. And most school districts on Long Island have brought their students to this activity. Here are some students working in the lab. This was a key grant in '96. We got an NSF ATE award. This was our first real exposure to pre-service and in-service teachers. We developed workshops for them, and we built biotechnology laboratories in 2 community colleges and 2 high-needs high schools. And we began to get some sense of the needs. And they were dying to have a master's degree in teaching biology, which we didn't have at Stony Brook. In fact, we don't have an education school at Stony Brook, which is a plus because we don't have the arguments between schools of education and schools of arts and sciences. It's the minus because we don't have those skills around. But on balance, we've taken what we have. We think it works outstandingly, so the pedagogy actually resides in the content area in our programs. So this grant got us involved in science teacher education. We started developing a master's degree in biology teaching. 2 years later, we got it through the state. We took in our first teacher. And now we've graduated about 250 students with master's degrees in teaching biology that are now farmed out across Long Island, New York, and around the country. The next year we got our second Hughes grant. We opened up opportunities for middle school students from both high needs and regular schools to come to the Stony Brook campus to work in the labs and partake in the activities. And we began to do more and more with in-service teachers along with the other activities we had carrying on. I think you can see I'm going to fill out all these boxes before I'm through here, but that's where we're going. This stuff is expensive. I didn't have any lab space. We didn't have any money, and this Hughes grant, which was $1.8 million, allowed us to make a case to get lab space at the university, so we got the lab space to do it. We got 5 or 6 labs. We put a lot of money into it, and if you do this and work hard at it, a year later you get something like this where you get several thousand students who get opportunities they wouldn't ordinarily get. 4 years later, we had then Governor Pataki. We've been through a lot of governors in the last few years, but he was governor then. And he came down and saw our show, and it was great for the students, great for all of us. These are actually, working with us are teachers in high-needs school districts, these 2 gentlemen here. It's our President Kinney right here, who's been golden through all this. We then began to develop a lot of in-service teacher workshops. They're taught by teachers most of the time. They're designed by, we ask the teachers what they want. We have campuses at Stony Brook, Southampton, and Manhattan. So we really let the in-service teachers take a lead on this. We don't tell them what to do. We poll them. We actually we use an online questionnaire where we try to find out what they want, and we try to make available to the teachers what they want. We also, once we get good in-service teachers in, we don't want to lose them. We're building a learning community where these teachers stay connected to Stony Brook forever. So actually this summer we're hiring 48 of these teachers come in and work in our summer. We have camps, we have workshops, we have activities at the K-12 level, and we try to keep these teachers continually a part of the university so they will never go away. We actually have a few of them that are teaching university courses who are really strong at it, and several of them have earned their PhDs and are really being helpful in new ways. This is a rich way of keeping the schools and the university involved, kind of a new model where we're really all in this together and we cycle back and forth. If you were to come into our labs and offices, you would run into teachers and students and in-service and pre-service. We have a lot of different activities going on at once. It looks like chaos, but I guarantee you it's a learning community. We actually have teachers who we write grants with. We've just had a whole variety of opportunities, and teachers have skills that you don't really know until you start working with them. I mean, I think the teaching profession is almost like being an undergraduate teacher was 20 years ago. The opportunities that are available, if I had it to do over again, I would be happy to go into teaching high school. There's just so many opportunities now, and we don't have any trouble attracting talent to take down these opportunities. So in 2002, we got our third Hughes Award. This is when we snuck into the elementary school, which we snuck out of with the students because we couldn't handle the students on the university, but we stayed with their teachers. And we have a lot of workshops for elementary school teachers. We started doing a lot with the public, Friday open nights in science, where we bring the public in so they can learn. And we develop faculty and graduate and postdoctoral teaching fellowships, which are kind of unusual because these people need to know how to teach too, and they need to learn it before they get in front of a university classroom. The next year I got an NSF Presidential Award. It was only $10,000, but I took it back to the university and I asked all my deans and chairs and everybody to match it. And 11 of them did, so we got $120,000. We used this for fellowships for teachers to go into the high needs districts around Long Island, and this really got us attached even more to these districts. Because of our activities in running the MAT in biology starting in 1998, I lobbied, when we didn't have an education school, said, gee, you should put the science teaching programs all in under our area into my I thought they would because we'd done a great job, but the provost decided to do this. So in 2004, we took over the master's degree in teaching biology, chemistry, earth sciences, and physics. And so now all of these programs are run out of the biochemistry department, which only happens, it's kind of an accident, but it's a good accident. It really works well. And this year, 2008, including math, which you'll see later, we'll graduate more than 50 students with master's degrees in teaching in math and science. And many of these are older students. This year we have 2 dentists and a physician in our class. We don't have any trouble attracting especially the older student talent into teaching. I think the world has changed. I think people want to teach now. I think people in this room are helping that process, and people from the corporate world are also doing the same thing. So I couldn't be more optimistic about what we can do and who's going into it. Our pre-service activities, we actually get our teachers, we try to get them as much practical experience as possible. Having the biotech lab there right around the corner, we have our pre-service teachers, while they go into the schools to get experience, they can also go into university laboratories and watch or co-teach these labs that are taught to middle and high school students. So it's really been a nice opportunity. And, it's weird because some of them get better than the faculty very quickly. It's just, you just never know what's going to happen. But good teaching talent, if you give it an opportunity, it's not hard to see who can do it. They work as teaching assistants for undergraduate courses. The dean is excited about this because we don't have enough graduate students. It's good experience for our prospective teachers. It's really worked out well. And like I said, if you come there in the summer, you'll see I used to know them all. I don't even know all of these students now because we have so many former teachers coming back to work with us in the summer. 2006, we got an NSF Noyce Fellowship. That was alluded to before. So we have fellowships, again, for teachers that are going in high needs districts. We've awarded about 28 of these. We got our last Hughes grant in 2006, and I love the Howard Hughes Medical Institute because it allowed us to assimilate and bring all of these activities together. The richness of this is not apparent from this slide, but the pre-service and in-service teacher activities are really kind of a fulcrum here, and they can integrate into activities at all of these levels depending on the particular activity. 2007, we got funds from the same institution, I guess, that you got funds from, the Petrie Foundation, to support teachers who want to go teach in New York City, and we're starting to award these, and we're extremely grateful for the Petrie Foundation for doing this. This seems to be a familiar, I kind of carry this thing around with me when I'm talking because I always need a prop, and so I can see I'm not alone here, but everybody does the same thing. And in 2006, I went to the meeting at the National Academy and led the New York State delegation. I'm all for America competes. It's time to show me the money. We know that the issue is out there, and it's really time for the national interest to ante up and fund the things that we all know are needed. I talk about this being entrepreneurial because I guess because of my business background and because of the way I was originally trained, although I ended up getting educated as a cell biologist. But we have funding from various granting agencies. We're going out to the corporate people, and I'm always making the rounds of the university trying to raise funds as much as I can. And you find out that your work tends to be a lot of fundraising and doing this kind of thing, which is fine for me because we really have an excellent team now. Yesterday, we were really fortunate. We had Congressman Bart Gordon came by to see what we were doing, along with our own Congressman Tim Bishop. This is in the biotech teaching lab I was talking about. This is where we've had 40,000 students go through. He came by there and he saw a fish glowing green, and I don't know if he knew quite what to make of all the things that he saw, but it was certainly an impressive show, and we were thrilled just to have this kind of support at the national level. Means so much that we really appreciated it. And this is where we started out in '94. We weren't really sure where we were going. We just knew that the timing was right to do something in education. Here's Stony Brook. Here's our two community colleges, actually the largest ones on Long Island, about 20,000 students each. And then if you go to this year, I mean, it looks like measles. We're all over the place here, and this is really underrepresented, this number of schools, and we're also out of the state as well. And we've had individuals come in and go out from various states, and we're starting to send out and bring in people from around the country. This is not, while it's a national issue, it's a global challenge because the competition is global. We need to know what's going on out there. We need to bring in their people, and we need to send our own people out there. I mean, it's a great time to be young and be doing this kind of thing, and we need to take advantage of these opportunities. And this is the crowd here. She's the director of the math education who was just hired last year. He directs science education. He's being voted on for tenure today. It's really a wonderful crowd of people. I love the work we're doing, and I couldn't be more optimistic about our opportunities in the future. Thank you.
We are so far behind. Initially, I was going to ask for a couple of questions formed as haikus, that brief. But we're just really, I think what we'll do, if we could, is hold a discussion with this panel till we get to lunch, and instead go right to the next panel, so we'll be done with that before our final keynote speaker arrives. My apologies to the panel. This is really all inspiring. I think all of you gave us that sense of optimism that David was talking about. Could I ask the next panel to please come up? Thank you.
Earlier edition was called
Oh, you know what? I just brought my glass up with me. Thank you. I am. Did you know?
Got the wrong Karen with that. Karen's nice to see
Am I in the
you
wrong
again.
place? Was I in the wrong place? I'm so sorry. I can.
Oh, it's okay.
Well, thank you, panel. I'll be very brief in my introductions. You have the distinguished bios in front of you. I'm going to show my bias as being a country boy from Oregon and introduce Karen Steiner first. She is a math science middle school teacher, really leads the math team there in the High Desert Middle School, which is located in Bend, Oregon, which used to be a smaller town than my own Pendleton, Oregon, which is a little further north and east. But now Bend has been discovered by California and has raced ahead to 90,000 some people. To her left, and a bit to our right, we have Vance Abbott. Vance has the kind of background that would make anybody envious. 20 years with Disney, and then focusing on the Manned Space Flight Education Foundation. I mean, I think at least for my kind of fantasy life, this defines it right there. But he's gone on to really immerse himself further in the question of education, maybe bringing that spirit of Imagineering that they have at Disney. And he's now the executive director of the Triangle Coalition for Science and Technology, which really fits part of our theme today of bringing different key stakeholders together. And I'm delighted to welcome Kristin Farrell with us today. She is the K-12 coordinator and public affairs associate at the American Society for Engineering and Education. And she, before that, appropriate enough, she focused on nutrition education. So this is food for the body and food for the mind as well. And I had the pleasure of working with Kristin in being on a panel that she put together to talk to a group of deans of engineering who are, I'm pleased to say, very engaged in this question. Why don't we start with Vince, give us that overview, and then we'll go to Oregon, and then we'll go to the deans of engineering.
Well, good afternoon, I guess it is now. It's really a pleasure and an honor to be here today. I have some good news. I do not have any PowerPoint slides. It's not that we're not good at PowerPoint slides. It's just that I thought you'd all seen them before. I was struck as I sat and listened to the earlier discussions today, and I'm going to digress just for a second here and say that it sort of seemed to kind of border on the idea of teacher bashing. And I don't mean that to be a put down to anybody, but we have a tendency sometimes to look at the problem as how do we solve it, and we look to the key of teachers. And it's easy sometimes to say that, well, if the teachers did a better job, the students would learn better. And sometimes the problem is more complicated than just the teachers, because I've been very, very fortunate to work with some of the best and brightest teachers that the country has to offer through the Albert Einstein Distinguished Educator Fellowship Program. With this program, we bring math, science, and technology teachers from around the country. From so far, 38 of the 50 states have been represented. No, I'm sorry. 48 of the 50 states have been represented. We have 2 that haven't had a fellow yet. We have fellows currently serving in various offices and agencies here in Washington, D.C. And what's really unique about this program is we have the opportunity to get a teacher or an educator's perspective as policymakers and agencies develop programs and concepts going forward. It's been an interesting challenge. Most of us, I think, would welcome the opportunity to have a teacher sitting with us saying, that's a good idea, but here's where that application falls down in the classroom. Or this is the difficulty we'll have translating that through a school district. I think all the researchers that are here oftentimes look at things, and I fall in this category too, so I can say this. We look at things as if it were a much simpler process, and the rules that govern what happened in the classroom are not always as straightforward as we would like them to be. And so having the teachers here has provided a great resource. You'll hear from Karen Steiner, who's actually one of the Albert Einstein Distinguished Educator Fellows that's here this year working at the Department of Energy. Others, Mimi's back here, and Mel is in the back, and some others who are fellows currently or have been fellows in the past. And I'm looking around the room to see if I missed anybody, because that, of course, would be embarrassing. So what we try to do at the Triangle Coalition is to bring together these voices, the voice of education, the business voices, the corporations, groups like ExxonMobil, Dow Chemical, DuPont, 3M, Verizon, AT&T, all the people who have a vested stake and interest in a strong workforce, the education component, the teachers who are in the classrooms, and then we also bring in to play the various societies, the professional societies, groups like AAE, although they're not a member, they should be. But we have the National Science Teachers, NCTM, IEEE, biotechnology teachers, biology teachers, marine biology teachers, microbiology teachers. All of these groups come into play as well. So we try to bring all those voices together to provide a common view of where education is going, what the strengths are, what the weaknesses are, and where we can all work together to find a solution. Because I think it's in that common vision, common voice that the real focus needs to be brought together. And I think that all of us have something to benefit from that perspective. We find that, ironically, as we bring the teachers in, they have a great opportunity working in the various federal agencies. We're at NASA, NOAA, NIST, NIH, NSF has a number of fellows, and there's fellows at the Department of Energy, and we actually have 4 fellows this year up on Capitol Hill working in congressional offices. Next year we'll actually have one with Bart Gordon. We've had one with his staff before. And so we have an opportunity to have people at a variety of levels providing some influence into the education process. So I'll kind of turn it over to Karen to give you a view of some of the things she's done at the Department of Energy and some of the programs they've got going. And I'm going to be expeditious on time, if that's all right.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good
And
morning.
you can talk a little bit about Oregon if you want to.
Actually, we have several representatives from Oregon. We have a gentleman from Oregon State who's now at Idaho National Laboratory, and
Erica, and I work
from Lincoln City.
So,
Okay. Let's see. I guess it's still morning. No, it's afternoon. Sorry. I was going to speak in the morning. No. I appreciate the opportunity to be here, both as a public school teacher who started in San Diego in the inner city and now is in Oregon, and also a representative of the Department of Energy this year as an Einstein Fellow. The Department of Energy office in which I work is in the Office of Science Workforce Development for Teachers and Scientists. Our office contributes directly to the preparation of professionals in the STEM disciplines. Our office, WDTS, supports the major national goal, which calls for the continuing development of a core of highly trained professionals devoted to the task of keeping America at the forefront of scientific innovation and international competition. We utilize the unique physical and intellectual resources of the Department of Energy through its network of national laboratories to achieve this goal. The national laboratories provide experiential learning opportunities for students and educators to help meet our future needs or workforce at the Department of Energy, private sector workforce needs, and also to enhance the ability of K-16 school systems to creatively and effectively teach science and mathematics. Here is a representation of our 18 national laboratories. You may see the geographic diversity and scientific diversity with respect to the different colors of the national labs here with respect to their scientific disciplines. The key here is that the Department of Energy has national programs which are truly implemented at the local level. So I believe strongly that our laboratory education directors are very responsible for the implementation of our programs. I'm going to briefly just talk about the experiential learning opportunities. We do work with experiential learning, which is a variation of constructivism, which takes our opportunities for our programs to depend on developmentally appropriate facilitator-supported learning activities developed by the learner. Our programs really depend heavily upon scientific mentors or scientist mentors and master science teacher mentors for facilitating that role. Both our scientist mentors and master teacher mentors encourage students to apply new knowledge and skills in a practical, real-world context, whether it be in the classroom, in the workplace, or other. I really like this quote that says, "In school, you have a project and the teacher knows what's supposed to happen. Here, we have absolutely no idea what's supposed to happen, and we have to figure it out." Things happen all the time that defy logic. Our programs at the Department of Energy, we have 5 major programs which address STEM education, K-16 and beyond. Science Undergraduate Laboratory Internship, or our SULI program, Faculty and Student Teams, FAST teams, Pre-Service Teacher Program, or PST, Community College Institute programs, CCI, and the Academies Creating Teacher Scientists, which are ACTS. I'm just going to focus on our Pre-Service Teacher Program and our ACTS teacher today. The Pre-Service Teacher Program, or PST, is designed for students who are preparing for a teaching career in a STEM discipline. The program specifically addresses the national need, and especially what we've heard today, to improve the content knowledge of STEM educators prior to entering the teaching workforce. PST participants include students not yet credentialed, but who have declared a desire to enter the education profession. This is a 10-week summer intensive program in which these teachers become a cohort at a national laboratory. One of the exciting initiatives that we have worked on and you heard about today, which is the Csu Star Program. That's a science teacher and researcher program which Dr. Baker from Cal Poly, we heard earlier, from Dr. Fitzgerald, has they did a pilot project last summer at the Lawrence Livermore Laboratory, and they're taking it to the 4 national laboratories, NASA Ames, and next year hopefully to JPL and General Atomics, with their pre-service teacher program as a model for federal laboratories and partnerships in the higher institutes or higher education institutes. These students have laboratory experiences which are designed to help them assimilate their understanding and their undergraduate preparation before beginning their teaching assignment. Seminars at the national laboratories which encourage students to engage in self-evaluation and provide opportunities to share instructional tools and resources designed to build that knowledge are gained from their laboratory experiences and how to take that into the classroom. The key here is that the student teacher or the pre-service teacher has the cohort that they've gone to the laboratory with, and also they work with a master teacher who has also been through a laboratory experience during the summer in order to help understand how to create that inquiry in their classroom. This is an excellent quote, I think, where it says, "Doing science in the laboratory provided me with confidence in the content area," something we've definitely heard today, "showed me my strengths and weaknesses in the laboratory, and most importantly for me, provided a physical example of inquiry learning and how thoroughly we know a topic when we investigate it ourselves." I think that clearly speaks to the program and what we've heard as well. One of the outcomes that this pre-service teacher will do is they will write an abstract of their research as well as a paper, or they will have a poster presentation that they present at the end of the summer. Just as a real quick brief, the Journal of Undergraduate Research is published by the Department of Energy, Office of Science, and this year's document has over 600 research abstracts that are just done purely by undergraduates at the national laboratories during the summer. The Academy's Creating Teacher Scientists, or we call our ACTS program, has a primary goal to create a cadre of STEM educators who have the content knowledge and scientific research experience needed to become leaders and agents of positive change in K-12 science education. These educators are the teacher leaders at their school, at their district, and also within their state. Again, they come as a cohort of teachers. It is a 3-year commitment by the educator at a national laboratory, who spend between 4 to 8 weeks working under mentor scientists to build that content knowledge, the research skill, and a lasting connection with the scientific community through the research experience. They are paid a stipend, as the pre-service teachers are. They also are paid for their travel to and from the national laboratory, and they do receive a housing stipend. I think the exciting thing for the ACTS teachers is that each year they're given $2,000 for equipment for their school, and they're also given $2,000 for professional development. This is a very intense, we believe that it's a very intense professional development because it is sustained over a 3-year period. They keep in contact with their master teacher throughout the school year, as well as with their scientist mentor at the laboratory. Okay. The next program that the Department of Energy does have is what you've heard from Vance already, the Albert Einstein Distinguished Educator Fellowship, of which I have been very honored to be a recipient. It was actually established and was passed by the United States Congress in 1994. We have 17 fellows this year at the agencies that Vance spoke about, and we are representing 14 different states this year. The law gives the Department of Energy the responsibility for administering the program, and for elementary and science, mathematics, and technology teachers to come to Washington. Since its start, we have had 160 educators from throughout the United States and the territories. They have provided that practical insight as a classroom teacher to the federal agencies. And I do want to say that I do appreciate that the Department of Energy has heard the voice of the teachers, and also the Woodrow Wilson Center. Kent Hughes brought the current fellows to this room, in which we had a discussion, and I do believe it was a very fruitful discussion, and it was, I think, very vital that the teacher voice, the practitioner voice, be heard. I do echo the sentiments earlier from CalTeach and UTeach of that practical perspective. I do want to say that currently, right now, the other 15, Mel from NSF is here, another Einstein Fellow, but the other 15 are at the Department of Education right now. We have developed a distinguished educator panel to help give the perspective from the classroom to agencies, and so they are speaking right now at the Department of Education and giving our insights. I just want to briefly say also that Representative Honda had said in a briefing last fall, he said that if you want to change education, if you want to know what's happening in education, hire a teacher. And he has an educator fellow, an Einstein Fellow in his office, and he's had one for a couple of years. In summary, the Department of Energy Workforce Development for Teachers and Scientists programs, they seek to create a cadre of STEM educators who have the proper content knowledge, connections to scientists and engineers at the national laboratories, and mentored scientific research experiences. National laboratories provide STEM undergraduate students and science educators with the knowledge and skills needed to improve their academic preparation, their classroom instructional skills, and overall professional abilities, including their capacity for future leadership roles in the STEM disciplines. DOE strives to build partnerships among national laboratories, colleges and universities, and private sector entities through its education programs. The role of WDTS in response to the political, the public, and private call for a new level of excellence in science education is dynamic, exciting, and yes, challenging. We remain committed to our mission to design and facilitate the implementation of world-class, experience-based research learning opportunities for undergraduate students and educators. Thank you very much.
Kristin?
I'm just going to provide a very brief overview of the American Society for Engineering Education and the work we're doing in K-12. Currently, we have close to 500 member institutions worldwide, which consists of nearly 80% of the engineering colleges and universities in the U.S. We're heavily involved in policy and competitiveness issues within the K-12 department, but for now I'll just focus on what is directly relevant to teachers. About 6 years ago, our deans asked us to become more involved in the pipeline issue, so we developed the Engineering K-12 Center. The primary audience for this is K-12 educators. We're just looking to bring STEM, specifically engineering, and to a lesser extent technology to the K-12 classroom. We're hoping to just enhance the public awareness of this, also provide educational resources to teachers and facilitate networks between our member universities, the deans of these member universities, their outreach departments, K-12 teachers, and members of industry and other people who are heavily involved in STEM at a K-12 level. Our most visible product is the Engineering Go For It. It's a biannual guide to engineering careers, specifically for high school students. It overviews all the different fields of engineering and the necessary steps they would take to be successful in those fields. So what they need to, what math and science they need to focus on throughout high school to apply to and be accepted into these engineering colleges. This will be next published in the fall of 2009, and in response to the NAE messaging study on the public understanding of engineering, we're working to focus the content of the magazine less on the math and science behind engineering and more on what engineering can do to shape the world and solve climate issues and develop clean energy and other things that this study showed kids very much relate to. So we're working to rewrite the content of this publication, and that will also be reflected in our K-12 website, which up until this point has mirrored a lot of the information we provide in the publication. But moving forward, we want to have this focus on improving life and saving the earth and other issues that kids specifically in the high school and middle school can really relate to get them excited about engineering, and that it's not this scary math and science heavy subject area. So in addition to that, we also are heavily involved in an ongoing project with 5 other research universities to develop teachengineering.org. It's an online database of engineering curriculum modules. It's completely free, and the idea is that teachers can go to this site and find lessons and activities that can be incorporated directly into their pre-existing math and science curriculums. All of the modules on the site are mapped or in the process of being mapped to state and national standards of learning in science, math, and technology. Additionally, each year we hold a workshop on K-12 engineering education. This year it's being held in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, with the help of the University of Pittsburgh, Carnegie Mellon University, and the Carnegie Science Center. This workshop annually has close to 200 K through 12 teachers, and basically we just want to show them activities and exciting ways that they can bring engineering and technology into their classrooms. this year we're offering them continuing education credit through the School of Education at the University of Pittsburgh. So they will spend a day with, attending these sessions and learning about different ways to incorporate engineering and technology into their pre-existing curriculum, and also receive continuing education credit for it. Let's see what else. We are also involved with just an ongoing process to attempt to develop a network of high schools that are now teaching engineering and teaching engineering technology courses. We were constantly being contacted. I'm constantly being contacted with requests for, other schools and other teachers that are doing the same things that these teachers are doing, and we're finding it challenging to basically point them in the right direction. We know a lot is going on here, and I mean, it's obviously easy for us to identify specific curriculum being used, specific Project Lead the Way schools, for example. But we also know that outside of Project Lead the Way, there is a lot of engineering being taught, in K through 12, specifically at the high school level. So we're working to develop a network of high schools who are currently teaching this, with the idea being that these teachers can learn from each other, and just as a way to connect with the students and the teachers. That's a basic overview of what we're doing right now in regards to STEM education, and specifically engineering. Just as a final comment, we found through conversation with a lot of our deans of engineering that many of them are interested in working with the schools of education at their specific universities and many programs like this are already in place, but to produce engineering graduates that are also prepared to go into the K-12 classrooms and teach science and technology and engineering. And that's something we're looking into, and kind of just trying to determine how we can play a part in that moving forward.
Again, we are far enough behind. I'm going to ask the forbearance of the panel just to take questions over lunch. The next thing on our agenda are some lessons learned, key challenges, next steps by